Hey, I'm Sanjana,
And I'm Keya.
and we're back with the new segment this week.
Wait, but before we dive into
Can you
that,
stop interrupting me? We literally just got
no,
started.
no, but really quick, did you watch that movie? What was it
You don't even know
called?
what it's called.
No, The Martian.
Oh, actually, I did. Wait, it was like actually interesting. I'm surprised you watch movies like that.
I'm gonna ignore that, but I brought it up because honestly, don't you think that they made the mission seem like so much more of a big deal than it really was? I feel like I could do that training and qualify to go to Mars.
You? Really? So you think you have what it takes? Let's talk about it. Keya here thinks she's so close to being able to participate as an astronaut in a human mission to Mars. But me? I think she wouldn't even make it through the training. By the end of this episode, we'll find out.
You're acting like Mars is so out there. Think about it. We've landed humans on the moon multiple times, and we've even had a chimpanzee travel all the way up to the moon and back. If the chimpanzee could, why can't I?
You're joking, right? Mars is so different. First of all, you have to consider that traveling all the way to Mars is much more dangerous than any trip we've made so far. We are exposed to a large amount of radiation from spending so much time in space, and when considering Mars, whose atmosphere is thinner than that of the Earth, it provides less protection against radiation. Especially if a solar flare is directed towards the spacecraft on its way to Mars, this could be even more threatening.
True, the conditions are also very different. On Mars, astronauts would need to live and work in 3/8 of Earth's gravitational pull for up to 2 to 3 years. In addition to that, during the 6 month trek between the planets, astronauts will experience total weightlessness. When astronauts finally return home, they will need to readapt many of the systems in their bodies back to Earth's gravity. Their bones, muscles, and cardiovascular system will all have been impacted for years without the standard gravity of Earth.
There's also a high risk of the astronauts suffering the effects of isolation and confinement. Mars is about 140 million miles from Earth. For comparison, traveling to the moon was only over a distance of 239,000 miles. This yields a travel time of about 7 months to get to Mars, just one way, making a round trip about 2 to 3 years. Think about all that time stuck in the same ship with the same people, with relatively the same things to do.
Yikes, that seems awful. But you're right, staying in the same spaceship must be hard, especially if the environment isn't great. There are so many factors to consider when thinking about the comfort of the astronauts. Some of those important habitability factors include temperature, pressure, lighting, noise, and the quantity of space.
Also, the distance from Earth is significantly bigger than that of the Moon, leading to a delay in communication. Due to the sheer distance and the limitations of how fast messages are able to be transmitted from mission control on the ground up to the spacecraft in space, there can be a communication delay of almost 30 minutes. This inability to communicate with mission control immediately is something that can be especially difficult. Because in case of equipment failures or a medical emergency, astronauts must be capable of confronting an array of situations without support from their fellow team on Earth. Therefore, practicing for these situations is necessary, and this is where analog missions come in.
Wait, what is an analog mission? Does that have something to do with an analog clock? I haven't practiced reading one of those in a really long time.
Oh my god, nice try, I guess, but no. Analog astronauts are what we call the participants in the simulation because they have the same tasks and have to deal with the same problems, analogous to real astronauts. These analog missions support research to develop methods and technologies to prevent and resolve potential problems on future human spaceflight missions.
Yep, they save time, money, equipment, and manpower. Essentially, analog missions are field tests in locations that have physical similarities to the extreme space environments. NASA engineers and scientists work with government agencies, academia, and industry to gather requirements for testing in harsh environments before they're used in space. Past generations used analog missions to prepare for leaving Earth's atmosphere, landing on the moon, and permanently orbiting our planet. In keeping with this concept, NASA is using analog missions to actively prepare for deep space destinations such as Mars.
You still think you could do this? These analog missions don't sound stressful to you?
Could you be any less supportive? I don't even know where these missions would take place and what kind of training activities I'd be expected to do. Let's talk about that first and then we'll see.
Okay, I'll give you that one. That's fair. Let's see. These ground based, real time simulations of Mars conditions often occur in locations on Earth whose environments are similar to the ones that would be encountered on Mars. This can range from the deserts of Utah and Oman to glaciers in the Tyrol and the Dachstein giant ice caves. This is because even though the temperatures vary greatly, the geology of these locations resembles the conditions on Mars.
Looking at NASA's efforts, it began a series of missions called CHAPA, or known as CHAPIA, which
Hello?
includes.
Do you want to tell us what that stands for?
Who's interrupting now? Well, it stands for Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog and includes 3 one-year missions to Mars surface simulations based at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Texas. According to NASA, each mission will consist of 4 crew members living and working in a 1,700 square foot module 3D printed by Icon called Mars Dune Alpha. The habitat will simulate the challenges of a mission on Mars, including resource limitations, equipment failure, communication delays, and other environmental stressors.
Wait, tell me more about the Mars Dune Alpha. What do you mean by habitat? Is it like you're closed into a space and it's supposed to resemble Mars?
Kind of. The Mars Dune Alpha is a prototype habitat made of a series of interlocking modules that can be assembled on site using a large scale 3D printer. The modules are designed to be self sufficient and sustainable, with features such as an airlock, a laboratory, sleeping area, kitchen, and a bathroom. It serves as a testbed for evaluating the feasibility and practicality of using 3D printing technology to build habitats on Mars. The analog missions conducted at the habitat simulate the challenges and conditions that astronauts may face on the red planet, such as isolation, limited resources, and extreme environmental conditions.
Right. Crew tasks may involve simulated spacewalks, scientific research, use of virtual reality, and robotic controls.
Oh, wait, tell me more about the spacewalks. I wonder how they can even simulate that.
I'm getting there. The simulated traverses are conducted in pairs in the sandbox portion of the habitat, which is filled with red sand to simulate the Martian landscape. The sandbox contains equipment such as a treadmill for the virtual reality walks to allow crew to simulate longer traverses beyond the physical confines of the 1,200 square foot sandbox.
During some of these simulated spacewalks, they'll also focus on field geology work. This can include locating and identifying rocks of interest, taking photographs, retrieving samples, and communicating unique characteristics to crew inside habitat to enter into a database.
The results of all of this research will provide important scientific data to validate systems and develop solutions. The analog is critical for testing solutions to meet the complex needs of living on the Martian surface. Simulations on Earth will help us understand and counter the physical and mental challenges astronauts will face before they go.
That makes sense. It's good to know all of these things can be simulated as close as Texas. But I feel like something is missing. I just need some more adventure in the mix. Isn't there something I can participate in that's not just living inside a habitat for months at a time?
Of course you would say that. It exists, though. One such place is the Negev Desert, all the way in Israel. The field crew performing the simulation will be inside a giant crater in the desert, and the Mission Support Center will be in Austria, equipped with all the flight controllers, engineers, flight planners, and so on. This allows them to recreate the time delay, the limited bandwidth, the lack of reliability, and practice transferring decision-making autonomy to the field as opposed to being more reliant on mission control. Oh my god, this all is so much. I feel like I'd never be able to do this. I cannot believe you're still trying to say you could.
Hey, don't say that. Look, I did not come unprepared. I did my research on the qualifications.
Wait. That reminds me of a joke someone told me the other day. Do you want to hear it? I'm sure our listeners want to. We've been doing a little lecturing anyway.
No,
I don't care. I'm going to say it. Why aren't koalas actual bears?
Why?
Because they don't meet the qualifications.
Wow.
Get it?
That was definitely something. Let's forget about it though and move on for sure. As I was trying to say, I came prepared with what kinds of characteristics and abilities you need to have to participate in these missions. For the Champion missions, you need to be a healthy, motivated U.S. citizen or permanent resident between the ages of 30 to 55 and possess a master's degree from an accredited university in a STEM field. Also, you must have at least 2 years of related professional experience in a STEM field or at least 1,000 hours pilot in command time or on a jet aircraft.
And to participate in analogs like the one in Israel, you also have to be between 165 and 190 centimeters in height and weigh at least 55 kilograms. Training for the Mars simulation lasts 5 months, and it covers theory seminars, a sports program, and practical exercises.
Wait, I feel like we barely talked about specific things that the training entails. Isn't that something I should know?
We'll definitely touch on more of that during our interview segment, but I have a couple of really...
Wait, we're doing interviews today?
Oh my god, wait, did I not tell you? We're doing 2 interviews today with individuals participating in the Israel simulations. Don't worry, we have time to prepare.
Oh my god, you always do this. Honestly though, I'm glad we get to talk to someone else because God knows we're sick of talking to each other.
Hey, stop it. Oh my god. Anyways, we have a couple really interesting tests we put together to share for right now. One of the tests consists of having to perform a complex task in which pressure is heightened by increasing the number of people watching you.
Boring. Here's one. Imagine you have to be loaded with 50 kilograms of weight to represent the spacesuit, up and down flights of stairs until you reach physical exhaustion before attempting complex tasks.
That is rough. Wait, I have the best one though. They even test your patience and frustration. Picture this: you're sitting at a table, separating out grains of brown rice from grains of white rice. Isn't that crazy? And here's the worst part: you have to do it with chopsticks with people watching you.
Oh, yeah, I would lose my temper on that one super
I
fast.
know you would.
Anyways, let's take a quick break for our super, super special, super surprising interview segment.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here today with microbiologist Anika Melis, age 38, who will conduct experiments on man and machine as part of the Mars simulation in the Negev Desert. Hi, Miss Melis. It's a pleasure to have you. For the Mars simulation, you'll be spending 4 weeks in isolation in the desert in Israel. What will you spend your time doing?
We'll barely have time to catch our breath. We'll be performing a number of experiments. Plus, there's all that everyday stuff we have to do on top of that cooking, repairs.
I get it. Describe a typical day for me.
It will have been strictly planned 2 or 3 days in advance. If there are unforeseen problems, a storm making its way too dangerously to the station, for example, we would improvise. Otherwise, the astronauts' jobs are laid out precisely to the quarter hour.
Wow, that sounds intense. What tasks do you have to do as a microbiologist?
On Mars, we'll be looking for DNA or cell fragments. At the same time, we have to make sure that we don't contaminate the surface of Mars ourselves. As an infectious disease specialist, I can deliver valuable knowledge on that front.
So you're a guinea pig yourself, too?
We're all subjecting ourselves to medical and psychological experiments. We just don't know how a human being will cope with being 200 million kilometers away from Earth.
Right, that's a pretty big concern. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Next, we have 37-year-old physicist Robert Wild from Innsbruck. Mr. Wild, thank you for joining us. I'd love to know, what quality does every prospective astronaut have to have?
You don't need one particular strength. You need a combination of multiple different strengths. But the basic ones, I would say, are the ability to work in a team and a technical background.
Sounds right. What are your strengths?
I studied physics in the US. My research areas are matter wave diffraction and ultra-cold atom quantum mechanics. And I have a good feel for field missions.
Wow, sounds intense. What sort of thing does a trainee astronaut have to learn?
Let me try to remember, there were theoretical seminars on astronomy and geology, for example, and everyone has their own made to measure strength and fitness program. Plus, there are lots of practical exercises, too.
Oh, interesting. What sort of practical exercises?
Glove exercises, for one. We practiced precision tasks wearing unruly gloves, and let me tell you, that was hard. Putting on the spacesuit was a challenge, too. With all the safety checks involved, it took 2 people 3 hours.
Oh my gosh. Is it a test of patience?
Our stress tolerance was put to the test in other ways, too. One time, I had to count and separate white and black grains of rice against the clock while being distracted the whole time. So I would say we pushed our stress levels to the limit.
That does sound super stressful. I can only imagine. I appreciate you, though, for coming out. It was wonderful talking to you.
All right, everyone, we're back for the last time with our final section of this podcast. Unfortunately, our time with you today is really close to being over. But I have one last thing to say.
Are you gonna bully me again?
As much as I'd love to, I can't this time. I was gonna say, for what it's worth, Keya, I think you have what it takes to go on a mission to Mars.
Wow!
Okay, don't let it get to your head, though.
No promises. But here are our sources, and
Thank you for listening.